Poor management of project risk can definitely lead to some implications for both the project and the organization. And as a project manager, it is up to you to ensure that you are managing these risks effectively. Throughout my experience, I've seen plenty of PMs just simply ignore potential risks that do arise, one at the beginning of the project, but also throughout the project lifecycle. This, my friend, is not good at all. And I say that because avoiding it and just not even paying attention to it can really impact your project and that strategic goal that your organization is looking to accomplish with that project. In this video, I will be providing you with 3 tips on how to better assess your project risk. But before we get started, please, if you like the video, please like the video, and then also share with anyone who you think this might be beneficial to. And then also leave a comment down below talking about any risks that you may have identified in your project and how you address them. But with that said, and without further ado, let's jump right in. Risk is defined as an uncertain event or a condition that happens within the project. This condition could be either positive or negative, but in some way, shape, or form, it actually impacts the project itself. Most project risks are characterized by the consequences for that particular risk and what is the likelihood of that risk actually occurring at the project level. So in essence, it can actually be evaluated as the impact it would have on the project deliverables, the impact it'll also have against the business itself, and also any social objective impacts. So understanding and managing risk is very crucial part of being a project manager and managing those projects effectively. One aspect of risk is the actual probability and consequence. This is the actual probability that the risk will happen, and then what would be the actual consequence and what will take place when that risk does or if it does occur. And a quick way for you to kind of understand a quick estimate of where you are at when it comes to your risk, you can actually multiply the consequence by the likelihood of it actually occurring, and that will help you get that quantitative data as to whether this risk will occur and the impact it may have on the project. And as I mentioned earlier, there are several types of risks that can actually occur. Ones that actually affect the project deliverable. Then there are some that actually affect the social objective of the project, and then also the business case of the project. So these can vary obviously as you're managing your own projects, but just identifying those risks is key. Risk and managing risk can be so impactful to your project and to your organization. That is really a crucial part of being a project manager. We should be making sure that we're tracking them effectively, that we're keeping track of them effectively, and that we're having our conversations and communicating with everyone who touches the project to identify what those risks are, what are some of the potential risks. You should not wait until mid-project to start figuring out what are some of the potential risks. But you should be taking that step at the beginning of the project and trying to figure out exactly what can possibly go wrong or even right, because not all risks affect the project negatively. Some risks might help you speed up the timeline, but not knowing that it's there, you may not even utilize it effectively. So now that we understand what is project risk, let's talk about 3 tips that you can use to assess your project risk on your project lifecycle. And the first one that we have here is engage your stakeholder. This is crucial in the risk assessment process because your stakeholder will understand a lot of what's going on in the project and what the project can potentially affect. That business case that I mentioned or that social objectives that I mentioned all can be identified by simply speaking to your stakeholders. They have more information than you may have, and they'll be the ones to know and see that potential risk before it arises. And by including them, you ensure that you take the proper precautions to ensure that the risk itself does not happen within your project, or that you're at least enabled to address it if it does. And tip number 2 for assessing your risk on your project is documentation and ask questions. If you're not documenting all of the potential risks that your team and yourself may have identified, or maybe you were looking through a lessons learned document and have identified some of that risk on your own, If you are not documenting that, then you're going to not keep track of it, because who's going to remember that 1 month into the project, 2 months into the project? Are you going to say, well, from the thing I remembered at the time we were planning, it was a risk, but I don't remember our goal, our plan, and how did we actually want to target it, and then what the risk was? These are the things that you want to document effectively. And as you are working through the project plan and even some of the early stages of your project, ask questions, ask your stakeholder questions, ask your team questions, ask the project sponsor questions. Try to identify as much risk up front as you possibly can, and asking questions is the best way forward. So number 2 is documentation and ask questions. And last but not least, tip number 3 is determine the probability of this particular risk happening. It's one thing to know what are the potential risks that are coming up in the project, but also knowing exactly, or maybe idea of when or how, if it can actually happen, is also key when managing your risk effectively. If you know that there's 5 risks on a project, 1 is least likely to happen, but 1 is most likely to happen, and it may impact the project on different levels, then paying attention to that most likely would happen risk first would help you mitigate it, or even accept it or avoid it, however you decide to manage it, before it actually impacts the project. This way you have an idea of what to expect and what are the deepest threats to that project. Now, another part of determining probability is just identifying whether the risk is going to happen, and then what other risks can this risk trigger, and what is the probability for those risks that it might affect as well. Just taking the time to really think through what that risk can impact your schedule and impact your project would give you that understanding of what you should prioritize your focus on. As you are determining your risk, and as you are going through these 3 tips to identify what the risks are, asking the questions, figuring out what's the probability, you should be documenting this, like I mentioned in tip number 2, in a risk registry. And if you don't know what that is, a risk registry is basically used to keep track of all of the potential risk and any risks that do arise on the project. So as you move forward, please work with your team and stakeholders to ensure that you are addressing risk on your project effectively. Spend time with your team and talk through it for certain projects, and don't skip this step. Help your project and organization thrive by being able to at least manage the risk prior to them showing up on the project. And you know what? It only takes but today for you to actually get it done effectively and efficiently. Just by starting, create a risk registry, put your heads together with your team, speak to your stakeholders, document effectively, ask questions, and determine the probability of this risk impacting your schedule and your project. Pinned to the comment section below, I will provide you with a link to a templated risk registry. It's just to get you started. Please tweak it the way you need for your organization, but I'm hoping that this helps you at least get that initial risk registry started. Finally, don't forget to hit the like button if you like this video. Please share with anyone who you think might benefit from this video, and then also subscribe to the channel so that you can get more tips and tricks on how to improve your project management skills. In my next video, I'll actually be going over a risk registry and showing you what I include in a risk registry, and hopefully that can help you jumpstart your risk management skills in your projects. But with that said, I appreciate the time chatting with each and every one of you. I appreciate all the support, and I please hope that you see me on the next one. Thank you, and have a fantastic day.